"Excuse me, flight attendant. I demand to be moved. I can't sit here next to him." The sharp, shrill voice cut through the hum of the plane's engines like a knife. Every head in the first-class cabin turned toward the commotion. Karen, a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled hair and a designer handbag, pointed an accusatory finger at Marcus, a tall, broad-shouldered black man in a tailored suit. The cabin fell silent. Passengers exchanged glances, some whispering, others pulling out their phones to record. Marcus, seated calmly by the window, looked up from his laptop, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to work," Marcus said, his voice steady but edged with frustration. He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of his words carried across the cabin. The flight attendant, Sarah, hurried over, her smile strained. "Is everything all right here?" Karen crossed her arms, her tone dripping with entitlement. "No, it's not. I paid for a first-class seat, and I shouldn't have to endure this." Marcus sighed, closing his laptop slightly. "Endure what exactly?" Karen hesitated, her lips tightening. "You know what I mean," she muttered, her voice low, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is unacceptable," Karen snapped, her voice rising. "I shouldn't have to put up with this. I paid good money for this seat." Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd heard it all before. The coded language, the assumptions, the entitlement. But this time, something shifted in his expression. A flicker of resolve sparked in his eyes as he closed his laptop with a quiet click. He turned to face her fully, his gaze locking onto hers. The cabin held its breath. "You're right," Marcus said, his tone icy. "This is unacceptable." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Karen blinked, caught off guard by his calm but cutting response. "I couldn't agree more," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "But not for the reasons you think?" Karen opened her mouth to retort, but no words came out. The power dynamic shifted in an instant, leaving the cabin in stunned silence. Marcus leaned back in his seat, his quiet determination setting the stage for what was to come. Marcus Johnson wasn't just another passenger in first class. At 42, he was the CEO of Horizon Airlines, a self-made billionaire who had turned the struggling company into a global powerhouse. But Marcus wasn't one for flashy displays of wealth. Today, he was flying incognito, a routine practice to assess his airline's operations firsthand. Dressed in a tailored suit, he blended seamlessly into the cabin. Until Karen's voice shattered the calm as she demanded to be moved. Marcus couldn't help but sigh. Even here, in the pinnacle of success, he was still reduced to a stereotype. Marcus's journey to the top had been anything but easy. Growing up in an underfunded neighborhood, he'd faced systemic racism at every turn. From racial profiling to dismissive teachers who doubted his potential, the odds were stacked against him. But Marcus had always been a fighter. He excelled academically, earning a scholarship to an Ivy League school. From there, he climbed the corporate ladder with relentless determination. Yet, even now, as the head of a major airline, he couldn't escape the biases that had haunted him since childhood. "You know what I mean," Karen had said earlier, her words echoing in his mind. Even as a billionaire CEO, Marcus was no stranger to being underestimated. People often saw his skin color before they saw his achievements. Today was no different. Karen's dismissive attitude and microaggressions were a stark reminder of the biases he'd fought against his entire life. Yet Marcus remained composed. His quiet strength was a testament to his resilience. As he sat there, laptop closed, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come and how much further there was to go. "You're right," he had told Karen, his voice steady. "This is unacceptable." The cabin had fallen silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. As Marcus settled into his seat, Karen's eyes narrowed. She leaned toward the flight attendant, Sarah, and whispered, Are you sure he belongs here? First class is for certain kinds of people. Marcus overheard but didn't flinch. He opened his laptop, focusing on the screen, though the tension in the air was undeniable. Karen's words hung between them, heavy, with implication. Sarah hesitated, her smile faltering. Ma'am, all passengers are assigned seats based on their tickets. Karen huffed, crossing her arms. Well, someone clearly made a mistake. Karen's behavior grew more overt. She loudly complained about the seat arrangement, muttering, diversity quotas are ruining everything. Then, as if on cue, she accidentally knocked over her drink, the liquid spilling dangerously close to Marcus's bag. Sarah rushed over with napkins. Let me help with that. Marcus glanced up, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp. It's fine, he said, though the weight of the moment pressed on him. Karen smirked, her tone dripping with false innocence. Oh, I'm so clumsy. These seats are just too close together. As the flight progressed, Karen's entitlement reached new heights. She stood abruptly, addressing Sarah in a voice loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. I demand to be moved. This man is making me uncomfortable. Marcus's jaw tightened. He closed his laptop, his gaze steady but his heart racing. The other passengers watched, some shifting uncomfortably, others avoiding eye contact entirely. Sarah tried to reason with her. Ma'am, we're in the air. Moving seats isn't possible right now. Karen's voice rose. Then do something. I shouldn't have to put up with this. The cabin was thick with tension. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke up. Marcus felt the sting of isolation, the silence of the bystanders, amplifying the injustice. Karen crossed her arms, her expression triumphant. Well, are you going to fix this or not? Marcus took a deep breath, his quiet resolve hardening. He knew this wasn't just about him. It was about every person who'd ever been judged by their skin color instead of their character. As the plane hummed through the sky, Marcus's mind raced. The power dynamic was shifting, but the fight was far from over. Enough. Marcus's voice cut through the tension like a blade, commanding and unshakable. The cabin felt silent as he stood, pulling out his phone and dialing a number. This is Marcus Johnson. I need to speak to the captain immediately. Karen scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Who do you think you are? Marcus didn't flinch. His calm authority was palpable, and for the first time, Karen's confidence wavered. The power dynamic began to shift, the weight of Marcus's presence filling the cabin. The captain arrived moments later, his face a mix of surprise and nervousness. Mr. Johnson, I didn't realize you were on board. Is everything all right? Karen's face paled, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Mr. Johnson? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The cabin watched in stunned silence, the tension reaching its peak. Marcus nodded, his expression calm but firm. Everything is under control, Captain, but there's something I need to address. Karen's bravado crumbled, her earlier entitlement replaced by uncertainty. Marcus turned to Karen, his gaze steady. That's correct, and I'd like to address this situation personally. Karen stammered, her words stumbling out in a rush. I didn't realize. I thought. But it was too late. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Marcus's quiet authority commanded the room, his presence undeniable. The captain stepped aside, deferring to Marcus. Of course, Mr. Johnson, whatever you need. Karen sank back into her seat, her earlier defiance replaced by a growing sense of dread. Marcus turned to the passengers, his voice firm but calm. I apologize for the disruption. But this kind of behavior is unacceptable on my airline, or anywhere else. The cabin erupted in murmurs of agreement and relief. A few passengers clapped, while others nodded, their earlier discomfort replaced by admiration. Karen shrank further into her seat, her face flushed with humiliation. Marcus's words resonated through the cabin, a powerful reminder of the importance of dignity and respect. As the murmurs subsided, Marcus took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling over him. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned. As the plane touched down, Karen was met by security at the gate. "Ma'am, come with us, please," one officer said, his tone firm. Her face flushed with humiliation as she was escorted off the aircraft. Passengers watched in silence, some nodding in approval, others whispering about the dramatic turn of events. Marcus remained composed, his quiet dignity a stark contrast to Karen's unraveling. He glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable, before turning his attention to the terminal ahead. Marcus stepped into the terminal, where a crowd had gathered, passengers, media, and curious onlookers. He took a deep breath, his voice steady and commanding, as he began to speak. "Today's incident was unacceptable," he said, his words carrying through the space. "At Horizon Airlines, we believe in dignity and respect for all. That's why, effective immediately, we're launching new diversity and anti-discrimination initiatives to ensure an inclusive environment for everyone." The crowd erupted in applause, their admiration palpable. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment as Marcus continued. "No one should ever feel unwelcome or disrespected because of who they are. This is just the beginning." His words resonated deeply, sparking a wave of support. The story began to spread, the first ripple of what would soon become a global conversation. Within hours, the story went viral. Social media exploded with posts supporting Marcus, and the hashtag number "not on my flight" began trending worldwide. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting Marcus's leadership and the broader issues of racism and privilege. People from all walks of life shared their own experiences, creating a wave of empowerment and accountability. Marcus's actions inspired countless others to speak out, proving that one voice could spark a movement. The world watched, captivated by the unfolding narrative of resilience and change. Marcus, once humiliated, now stood tall as a symbol of resilience and hope. His journey from adversity to empowerment inspired millions, proving that dignity and determination could triumph over prejudice. As he looked out at the horizon, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The fight for lasting change was far from over. What would you have done in Marcus's situation? Have you ever witnessed or experienced something like this? The narrator's voice is calm but probing, inviting the audience to reflect on their own lives. Let's start a conversation. The narrator continues. Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together we can build a movement for change. If the story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more powerful stories like this one. Together, we can spark change, one story at a time.